My search for my quest for truth in the world of AI has taken me literally around the globe. And I'm not going to tell you where it lands. I will tell you he's from Ireland. That's about as good as my accent's going to be on that one. I've got. I'm just going to get right into it. Enough of the preamble. I've got a few things here. When you're talking to an entrepreneur who's clicked off a lot of boxes, it's important that you understand where they're coming from, where their expertise is. And so today we're going to be talking with Rod Smith. And yes, I know you've all heard serial entrepreneurial before. However, proven background of really kind of turning any kind of disruption he's been involved in into opportunity, right? He's been doing this for decades. He's a Gen Xer, as I am. He started his journey really back with his father and this working class family, where he really honed his work ethic. His father had this manufacturing company. He also kind of developed his love and desire to be in a tech savvy role. He turned his father's manufacturing business into a leading company there in Ireland, then founded one of Ireland's first SaaS platforms, then went in to start revolutionizing staffing, was with Timpl. I love the name of that, Timpl. Then scaled shift fillers to an over $30 million company where he exited in only about a year and a half, which is very hard to do. Has just built and scaled many companies. I think we're up to 6 now, and is now a sailor. How about that? Is a sailor, for God's sakes. Rod, I don't know. I don't want to have a complex here today, but a sailor?
Yeah, I mean, you got to do something when the world locks down in COVID. You got to search for that opportunity to see what you can get out of it. So that was my one.
I would say so. Okay, so I have just mad respect for people who have literally, what do they call that? Circumvent the earth. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Someone who can
that's
sail
hard
around the
going.
world by themselves.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever do that, but it's an impressive feat.
I just keep, I don't know where these stories keep popping up in my feed, but I just was reading something literally. In fact, I think it happened the day you were, well, the year you were born, way back in 1975. There's like the story of like a 16-year-old who did this, and he brought cats with him to give, as like his little support, someone to talk to. I'm just blown away by that capability.
That is amazing, and that's a great one. I mean, that was way before people started to have their emotional support animals, right, on aircraft. He was a pioneer of that
He was
himself.
an absolute pioneer. Well, the thing is, you're talking about something that is incredibly difficult, and I think learning to do something as difficult as sailing is, it just kind of gives you this kind of renewed sense of confidence that you can rely on yourself and your skills to do something that is very difficult, even if you're not going great distances. How far have you gone? Is that even something that you measure or track?
It's not really something I've measured or tracked. I'd never sailed before COVID hit, so but I do have a good friend of mine and my co-founder in Glide that's been a sailor for most of his life, among
Oh, that's
other
nice.
things.
So you've got
So
someone you can kind of, no pun intended, learn the ropes.
precisely, and it is great
That's
pun
probably
because it
where
was.
that expression came from, right?
I'd say I wouldn't be surprised because each one has got a different name and everything. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, look, we've got so much to get into today. Before we get into Glide and talking about this AI platform that you have built, I kind of teased at the top, you being from Ireland. Where is it exactly though that you live?
Yeah, I'm not in Ireland anymore. It's a few years ago. As it happens during the startup phase of shift fillers, needing to get into the US, there was travel restrictions still on for travel direct to the US. So we took a detour to Cancun, Mexico, and I've been here since. So I live in Cancun, Mexico.
Oh my gosh. So literally, that literally could be like right outside your window, what we're
That
looking
is
at.
right outside. I actually took a because my behind me is directly is a blank wall. I took a photo of what my view here from to my left, and that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so
So
it's
yes,
probably like full on summer for you in terms of heat right now.
no, it's warm. It's in the 90s.
Okay. Hello. 90s is the summer for most people. So you see, you've already switched to Cancun time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, you're already there.
That's
Okay, so this is one of the problems that I have had, Rod, as I look at my company, just as an example, and just kind of people in general. Anytime you introduce a new idea, right, people kind of dig their heels in. You call it they hate change, they're just fearful of change. And I think that's got to be one of the biggest challenges, right? When you, as a tech entrepreneur, you're trying to introduce something new, you're faced with, I don't want to change. I mean, is this something that you're kind of experiencing in your journey?
constantly. I mean, I've done this. I mean, I think you said it at the beginning. I've kind of seen the opportunity in large shifts, technology shifts coming along, and market shifts, and being at the forefront of building technology and solutions around those. So I've seen and faced this in every business really, over the past nearly 3 decades, and it's at first it's very frustrating, and you kind of you say, why do people not get it? But I think in the years that have passed, I start to realize a lot more of the impact of pressure that they're under. Because you have to think about it when to empathize with those that are struggling to adopt to that change and that changing environment. It usually comes as after the change in the environment has started happening, and with that change is more pressure on them to perform, and the skills they have to do so, or that the knowledge they say, oh, this is how it's worked in the past. I'm now under more pressure to hit numbers or to get the placements or to do this. So I don't know how any other way that works. And I can't risk not doing it the way I know that works in order to try something new. Because if I do that, then maybe I'll fail. I think that comes a lot of it. So you've got this double edged sword of, if I try something and fail, it's going to be really bad, really difficult, cause me big problems. If I stick with what I'm doing, I mean, I'm going to have to do it much more of it to get the same output. Now that this market or this environment has changed or this new technology has come along, but given those two choices, you can see where it's very hard to say, hey, I'm going to take a roll of the dice and assume this is the right way to go, when I don't have time to lift my head above the parapet and see whether it's actually it's something I got to change or not. So I think that's kind of some come to me in more recent years. It's really that, yeah, it's very hard to make that choice and take that risk. And owners and of businesses and entrepreneurs, they're accustomed to taking that risk. That's what they do every day, when they start that business or when they do it. But expecting the team that is required to deliver on whatever KPIs every week, um, to adapt to a change that they don't know whether or not it's going to work. Um, I think that's where the real problems start.
Well, so how do you advise a leader or a president, whoever is wanting to go through the change, or maybe frankly, the team has brought the idea that this is what we want to do, brought it to the CEO, president, and they've decided, yeah, let's make the investment. How do you advise the top when it comes to hitting numbers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that I see a lot of when traditionally in all of these processes or businesses. we work on activity and we measure activity, and then we expect activity to return results. More activity makes more results. That's traditionally how. And over the years, we'll decide, okay, this is the activity that's important. It's either making phone calls, or it's sending submittals, resume submittals, or it's one thing or another. So we'll start measuring that and create a KPI. And then something new will come along. And what unfortunately happens is that they try to maintain the same KPIs and measures, while adopting something new in terms of process that is probably going to invalidate many times over the KPIs, or some of the KPIs that they've been following. So the first thing to do is I think for leaders is very clearly either redefine or cancel um, monitoring of certain KPIs for their team. So their team has that ability to to take the pressure off, to relax into it, to try and discover what actually impact it has, instead of trying to make sure that they're hitting the same KPIs they used to look for, at the same time as trying to adopt a system that works differently. Um, that's generally the first thing I think is important.
I think that would just take the pressure off. And then the leader and maybe the team has this concept of, okay, we're going to reset. Let's embrace the new technology. Then, we're going to make maybe your workflow is now changing. It should,
Yeah,
right? Some of those manual tasks are, hopefully are now being, taken by, some other kind of automation or some process. So really what you should do, in my opinion, is then maybe it's time to redesign your KPIs. Maybe just keep a key few measures and then just use the new technology and then start benchmarking.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I would just strip all the KPIs back during that period, or for those people that you're embracing with, and only set out two new KPIs, or KPIs that focus on two things: your customer satisfaction and your candidate satisfaction.
Oh, I mean, because you can't let that falter.
That's it.
And
Well,
and this
they'll
should
also
be
tell you
enhancing.
they'll tell you if it's a good thing or not. So you've
Mm.
got the measure before of saying, hey, this is what their baseline was. They gave you an NPS score, or they gave you this kind of praise. Um, Now, when you put in this new technology or this new workflow, does that improve it or damage it? And if it improves it, then you can say, hey, we know this is of benefit, because there's nothing more important than those two factors. You know,
Yeah, and if you're saying to yourself, "Gosh, we've never done a net promoter score. We've never surveyed our clients." Well, maybe you've got some other housekeeping items you need to do. Because you're wanting to improve your business, but to what end? Like
yeah,
by what measure? I
yeah.
mean, change for change's sake. You keep hearing everyone's moving to AI. You think you want to move to AI. That's the reason. You're probably going to probably fail. You're probably going to make a lot of investments, and really, it would be like a rudderless
Hmm.
yacht.
Well, the
Sorry.
experience with
See, I'm trying to bring the whole sailor thing. I'm just so impressed by that.
thank you. And it's actually it's funny that the I remember the days with Temp Buddy. One of the things we did most differently was we disencouraged the use of volume SMS messaging. So we said, instead of you got an opportunity, don't send it to 100 people. Send it to 5 people, and then if they don't respond, then send it to five more, and five, and so on. But make that automatic. Um, the difference being that the what that drove was, by focusing on that experience, you needed fewer candidates. You had a higher redeployment rate. You had higher satisfaction from them. You had better response rates. All across the board, from a candidate perspective, it was focused and made the experience much greater. The result of that, of course, was that their redeployment rate was much better, and their recruiters were doing 3x the volume of placements, the volume and of billing, simply from actually doing less messaging. So it's a when they look at this AI, and a lot of the time you'll see people saying, "Oh, let's do this prompting, or this more content, or generate more stuff and put it out there, or more emails," and the tendency is to do more of what you've been doing, and using AI to generate it in a more which becomes a very much a oftentimes when you generate a lot of stuff with AI, you lose the nuance, the personality, the character, the culture. Um, but you then increase the volume of it, of course, and you're not adding to anyone's better and adding to
You're
anyone's
not
day.
increasing UX. In
No,
fact, I love what you just said there, because I could imagine someone who has almost no experience with AI and thinking, great, we can message everybody now all at once. Okay, you're adding a problem for yourself, because typically what's happened, 100 people come in, and now the recruiter has to kind of manually go through. They manually go through and they contact the people that they need. And then they bring them in and they place them. So what happens is there's a percentage of those people that never get contacted. In
yeah,
some ways, you might say that's good because you've filled your requirement. What's the problem is there might be some better candidates that were at the bottom that you never connected with. So it would be more a better use of AI to somehow screen without maybe interacting with them, maybe through the resume, screen them, maybe a quick chatbot conversation to uncover some more information, and then focus on those people. But if you just straight out message 100 people and you only need to fill 20, um, you're going to have 80 people like, why did you bother me?
that's exactly it. And that's the and that but that is the tendency of like I said, when people are under pressure, they'll send more emails and they'll do more texting. The result, of course, is that you do that a few times and your response rates go down and down and down, which is what we've seen with texting solutions and so on. It's it really it's damaging. But added to that, you know, even those people that have applied, those 100 or otherwise, or the ones you've reached out to, um, you know, the experience that they now have is of your brand is probably is more negative than prior to actually applying. So you got to consider that too. You know, they may be suitable for the next role, or you might want them to apply for another role or a different role, or their friend might be looking for where do they go looking for a job. I mean, there's the knock-ons of providing no feedback and no response is also there. But that response can't be just an autoresponder that's that then it doesn't get followed up. So there's a lot of balance in that candidate experience. And one of the things, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but one of the things, that AI lets you do is say, well, let's go through this process. Let's let people apply or introduce them to apply. And then when we have enough of them, let's turn off the advertising. Let's not have other people waste their time on applications that are not going to get looked at.
Right.
Um,
And that's counterintuitive to how the system has been set up. The system is set up for you to run your ad for 30 days.
yeah, and try and get as more out and reduce the cost per applicant instead of thinking about actually getting.
Applicant, yeah, the whole UX experience. And if you have a better, more sophisticated method of screening and outreach, you might be able to do more with less. And then if you kind of run through your applicants, then you automatically maybe the system turns back on, brings some more people in. You said something to me that kind of got me thinking. You were describing AI in a different way. You were like, we need to really understand what it is AI is. Now, I thought I knew what AI was, but you have a kind of a slightly different take on it now that you've been in multiple startups and using technology to make, improvements.
Yeah, I mean, I've the benefit of, if we think back, my first enterprise was building web development, so websites for, and primarily that's how I ended up in staffing and recruiting, is that I started building technology for job board backend that wasn't available back in the 1990s, just as that transition was happening. As people went from paper-based resumes and fax-based resumes to email quite rapidly, actually. The and I was there for that at that point in time, building these sites. The I saw that what happened really there was, new technology came along, the internet and email. And on the face of it, it's hard. You could say, oh, what was it really? What mostly that whole revolution was represented was a change in how we communicated. So email being an obvious one, and the internet as well. The internet was just another source of information that we were able to then communicate, saying, "Here, go here to this link, find the information you want." You got more access to it and faster. So the sharing and dissemination of information became infinitely easier, faster, and more um, complete, more with more detail, um, and so people were able to then move faster. We saw similar things. Mobile came along that had another impact as well. That's freed us up from the desk and the constraints of that. What I see in AI is not a case of, oh, you can do prompting and you can get it to generate tasks and things like that. That's kind of like the early stage of you know uh, building blocks, learning to use building blocks for toddlers. Instead of thinking, hang on a sec, what's the skill that they're doing? They're understanding how to build structure, to have put strength in this, and how you distribute the load of different things, how you can balance things. Ultimately, how you can create something and understand whether or not it's stable or otherwise. It goes to bridges and everything else further on. So we're at the moment saying, oh, well, let's teach our people how to prompt, and what we're really saying is, hey, let's give them, uh, toddlers building blocks to play with, and think that that's actually a tool of work, and it's not. It's only a fundamental skill that contributes to the tools that will later be built. What I think AI is doing here is changing how we communicate, because beforehand you had this idea that you had to have two people to have a communication to make a decision, one to share information, one to collaborate on it, and so on, and then decisions are made, and then progress would happen from decisions being made and change. The What AI now provides is the ability to infuse an artificial intelligence with um, the combined knowledge and experience of your individual or your organization or otherwise. And then you only need one person in that conversation to have to come to a decision, or to have access to the right information, to get the right advice or otherwise. So when you start thinking of AI as a communication tool to accelerate that again over 24/7, to be so that you and or your business or your presence or your skills or your resources are actually available now 24/7, that don't need somebody on the other end to always be answering the questions, clicking the buttons, doing the tasks. You're now into a new communication paradigm, not a new I can generate content paradigm.
Yeah, you kind of couched it to me like, how do you think about how you use your mouse?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, and that too is another part of.
That kind of really got me thinking like how antiquated, you know, it's like you're real what you're really saying is we have to almost you have to break, your mind a little bit.
100%, and that's the yeah, the mouse example is a great one. Um, when you think about the tools and how we're using them, um, you interact with AI by voice or by chat, and there's not really a different way to interact with it. It's certainly the generative AI that we are most familiar with now. They're the fundamentals. Probably have video in the future with through robotics and things like that, but primarily it's those two. What's interesting is that when you look at how you interact with technology as a whole at the moment, on your cell phone, smartphone, you'll use your fingers and tap, but you'll also use voice for Siri or your Alexa or otherwise. And on your laptop, you've got the keyboard that you'll be using, but a lot of the time on the laptop, you're using a mouse and you're going click on that button, click on that field, do this and do that, and very deliberate actions. But you can't use a mouse to control AI at all. And if we already know that AI is going to be pretty ubiquitous. So if the interface between human and technology is changing to be chat and voice, and this just has neither chat nor voice capabilities. You got to start wondering, hang on a sec, how is that going to impact everything? What systems are we going to use now to do the work that we've been doing or that we want to do in the future? Because it's no longer going to be done on form fields and boxes and clicks and buttons and um, in that way, because that's just not how AI is going to be supporting you and making it easier for you. That'll be
That's going to
less.
be the back end. That may be the back end data solution, but the front end, it just needs you to communicate with it. Just
Yeah,
talk. What do you want? What do you need? And then
that's
it
it.
goes and processes it and delivers it up, right?
And you know the great news is that Microsoft has been there for quite a while.
So you're
They
talking
built
about Copilot?
well. No, I put on my first Microsoft Teams. When you think of all the applications on in your computer system, your desktop, your CRM is not voice native, nor is it chat native. Your None of the things are really chat or voice native, but Microsoft Teams is. Or whether you use if you're on Slack.
See, I'm not in a Teams environment, so I don't really, I can't just lean back on that knowledge.
Yeah, so this is what's interesting. I mean, Slack to a certain extent, or any of these, depending what messaging tools you're using internally. But a lot there's WhatsApp, Snap, these things are more they're native to voice and chat. Microsoft's done a very clever thing though. On top of that, it's also been over the last few years centralizing a lot of the sharing and collaboration tools for documents, spreadsheets, everything else, presentations and everything. It's been and SOP records, all of that stuff. It's been centralizing a lot of that stuff into MS Teams over the last few years. Now they layer on Copilot, which exists across your teams and other things. So now you've got this not native voice and chat interface to your technology via Microsoft Teams that's also connected to all of your other Outlook or your your PowerPoint presentations and other things. So you can see there's a definite direction there in what is going to be a very natural transition for people when they're using AI. It'll be natural to transition into being more heavily involved with Teams, with using Microsoft Teams to get things done. And they've got Copilot.
Well, hello there. So who do we have there?
That is my dog Gala.
Gala?
She's Gala. Yes, she's afraid of everything. So if anybody walks even nearby the door, she just kicks off.
Sure. You don't need an AI detection system. You just put Gala out there.
Yeah, she's always ready to bark.
My dog absolutely hates the big rumbly trucks.
I Yeah, I can imagine.
We were at a dog park recently, and a UPS truck went by the side of the park, which it has a fence, and I've never seen my dog run a fence before. And there were a few other dogs that joined in with her. Now she's an Australian Shepherd, so she loves to run and herd. So we discovered that we have a car chaser.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So those big rumbly trucks.
As long as they don't
And
catch the car,
long
isn't
as that, yeah, I was like, what do I do now?
that?
Um, so I was telling you kind of off air that I personally want to go through a demo of Glide with you because I've had a little bit of time to kind of look through your website and if anyone has been going through this journey of trying to determine, what kind of AI solutions do you need for your staffing, for your recruiting, there's no secret there. There's a lot of shiny toys that are out there. There's a lot of noise. Um, but I hope, people are understanding through talking to you. You do have a deep expertise and understanding, and I'd like to think that you're building that into your Glide platform. Give everyone 30,000-foot view. What is Glide? What problems are you addressing?
Awesome. Yeah. I might just start that with a little recap. We talked about my journey, entrepreneurial journey. It's been all around staffing. So from that first business of doing web development, that then swiftly started specializing in staffing and recruiting agencies and companies. It meant that I was working with owners, senior people in those organizations to build their websites or presentations or and otherwise. So managed to at a very early age start learning learning from the experiences of people who'd been already 20, 30 years in the industry back in the 1990s. And learning those what those critical things were important, and what great recruiters did, and what the expectations were, and how many placements a or contractors a recruiter would manage on a desk. Numbers that actually haven't changed very much over the years. But most critically, it was like, this is how recruiting done well is done, by people who've been doing it for a long time and had a lot of experience, and been very successful at it and building businesses around it and so on. And then, so I've tried to bring all of that in anything that I've done, is saying, hey, let me understanding exactly what that journey is for both the candidate, the recruiter, and the client, and what's important to them. Try to build solutions around that, and that's where kind of Glide is also takes most of its energy and insights from. It's a case of saying, if you think about being a great recruiter, and when a great recruiter knows what to do, when to advertise, when to not advertise, how to reach out, what the fundamentals are about getting people placed, and you try and view all of that into a series of AI agents that don't just do one task and more of it, a la we talked about before, doing sending to emails and so on. But when you look at this, it's a process that has interdependencies. It's like, okay, if you're going to screen people, you're going to make sure you reach them quickly. If you do that and you now have 100 applicants, but you only need 10, well, let's turn off the advertising so you don't get the others. If you want to make sure that that they're engaged, and that there's people are going to take the follow up, you need to give them feedback. You need to tell them, this is probably not a job for you, or you probably won't get a call, um, and or this is one where you will get a call. So you can relax. You don't need to apply for more jobs. Our recruiter is going to reach you in very soon. So there's a lot of those things that you've got to say. If I was a really great recruiter and I had all of the resource and all the time in the world, what would I do and how would I act? And that's what we've done, because effectively this AI is giving you infinite resources and the ability to provide an exceptional service and do it consistently without limitation. So Glide is
I
doing
think
it.
I think what I'm hearing here, and this is what I was kind of attracted to, is that you're coming out of the industry yourself. And if people haven't figured this out yet, anytime you're buying a tech solution, you really want someone who is deeply experienced in the industry, because they just understand so many of the little nuances. And instead of trying to buy some canned something off the shelf and then trying to do some kind of customization, if you have the intelligence already set up behind it, it really takes away a lot of the need to go in and like uber fine tune. I remember back in the days of SAP, people would just spend millions and they would lose their minds, trying to buy this solution and then adapt it to their business. And so, yeah, you're laughing because I think you know what I'm talking about.
100%. I mean, even I see it today when people are trying to, buy a solution or an ATS or whatever else, and they're saying, "Oh, we want to do the work. We want it to work this way," because they know what's important to their business. But they need to buy 4 or 5 different components. One for texting, maybe one for doing something else, and each one of those has limitations in how they work together or what they can do. So it's a series of compromises to try and put together this jigsaw puzzle that was never designed to fit in the first place properly. And that's what the people end up having to do at the moment, even. And we just don't think that makes sense. But it's also, the big thing for me is, you don't need to solve the obvious problem when actually you get more value out of solving the one that you thought was unsolvable. Um, my favorite thing is here, this idea of a candidate black hole, or candidate ghosting or recruiter ghosting. These things are not actually unsolvable problems. They are actually quite simple, um, and that's where what Glide tries to do about solving them.
Wait, you think ghost? Whoa, whoa, whoa. You okay? You take pleasure in solving the unsolvable. Now, if you were to go one of those Google trending websites, I bet ghosting would be always at the top when it comes to our industry, or the one heavily searched. This is something that we all deal with,
Yeah.
clients, candidates, everybody.
So let's just break down some little, simple exercises. Um, a recruiter can have meaningful conversations with between 10 and 15 people a day. That's it. Okay. So if you have more people to talk to
Well, that
than that,
doesn't sound like a lot, but that I guess that is.
it is, because you got to try to fail connect. You got
Like,
to
how
put the
many
time in.
do you not get a hold of?
Yeah, you've got to put the information into the ATS, the CRM. You've got a lot of tasks around it, but that's it. And it's interesting. The research I've done, it shows that that is the case across any industry, not just light industrial. It's also the same for IT. What changes is the depth of conversation that the recruiter has. So instead of having a 5-minute conversation, it's a 30-minute conversation. But it's that 9 to 12, 15 conversations a day is all they manage. Now, if you have a process that you're advertising, you're taking in applications and you're getting 50 a day, well, ultimately what's going to happen, and you try to reach all of those, well, ultimately what's going to happen is you start, first off, you don't get them the first day. It's now 3 days later before the 50th person is getting a response. And they're unlikely to respond to you after 3 days because, life has changed in that time. So, but what happens then, of course, is every recruiter in the plan says, "Oh, we don't get enough candidates because they're ghosting us, and we need more candidates." So now they increase the volume to 100 a day, and you're getting 100 applicants, and you're still only able to talk to 15. So now what happens is you've got more applicants coming in, and you're ghosting more people, and you're not actually getting any benefit. So you call for more applicants because you don't
And
have
then
a.
you multiply that by all the companies,
Yeah,
not just yours. And so now you've got this um, population of people who are just getting hammered
yeah,
with, requests. And they're just like, I'm so sick of this. And then, you talk about the candidate experience. They absolutely, I mean, people, if you've never been laid off or fired, and or you've always been someone who just got a referral and you got a job, you count yourself blessed and so fortunate, because literally at the top of the list of the most painful things to go through
it is. And
is trying to get a new job. It's awful.
it is. And the funny thing is one of the part the where places I see the most value that recruiters and staffing people have to contribute to the world, to everyone, to the process, is actually as coach, therapist, and an assistant to those people trying to make a transition from one job to another, or joining a new organization where they don't know anyone. I mean, that the value in that for the individual going through one of the 5 most stressful life changes that they can go through, changing a job, buying a house, getting married, et cetera, et cetera. There's 5 life-changing events that are the most stressful to go through. People go through changing a job far more often than they'd like to go through, I'm sure. But the one person who can be there to support them through that is a recruiter, and they don't have time normally, or they're not valued in the right way for that journey. Um, and that's a shame
Oh,
because
you just brought a good point up. Yeah, they're not valued, i.e., they're not, you're not paid to do that.
yeah, and
You're
it's
not
actually
paid to be a shoulder and a pillow.
yeah, but it's a crucial role. I mean,
But great recruiters will tell you that what has made them exceptional in their space is their ability to communicate and to build relationships. And you don't build relationships by just talking about the job, for God's sakes.
no, exactly.
They're
You got to
talking about life, everything, right?
yeah.
So if you can find a way, in this system to bring the right amount of people to those recruiters every day, I'm going to tell you, you will have some exhausted recruiters by the end of Friday.
Well, it's so
Do you
the
know what I mean? Like, if you're having 10 emotionally stimulating conversations day after day after day after day, I mean, that takes it out of you. You may not think that, but it
yeah.
does.
Yeah, and that's what they got to do, which is probably why the that limit still is there. It's, it's not about the depth of conversation; it's about the emotional involvement that you invest in that new person. You've got to keep doing it. So it's it's a really challenging role, and the value part, yeah, it should be valued because that's what builds sustainable brands and sustainable businesses.
I've
It's
gotten us off track, Rod, because I have lived this journey, and you and I could just go on
yeah,
about this, kind of emotional connection, but I want to make sure that people understand more about Glide. So I was the golden retriever there. I'm sorry, I took us off. Um,
yeah.
so with that in the backdrop,
So yeah, so this is, and it is, and all of that backdrop is important because those are some of the principles that govern what Glide is. Glide is principally a series of agents that does a number of things. One is we'll ingest the job requirements, try and enhance and make suggestions to how they might be better positioned or questions that might be needed for a recruiter. We then handle the distribution and posting of those jobs out to your job boards that you're normally engaged with for applicants to come back in. We handle applicant responses, so analyzing their past conversations, the resume they've submitted, anything else in relation to and how they relate to the job, and then reach back and say, we can see that for these reasons you're interested in this job. There's similarities. These are the things that the job is looking for that you have, but we also want to find out a little bit more because we don't know these things or we didn't get this information from your resume, and we need to know this if you're to know if you're a good fit for the job and tell you a little bit more. So invite the candidates in, and this happens all within minutes. And the happening within minutes is a really critical part of this because even the difference between a 3 minute response and a 10-minute response is 25% of candidate drop off. So this happens within minutes. The candidate is then given an opportunity to have a highly personalized chat with the AI, which is our second agent. And that AI is already understood based on the job description, the client requirements, has an understanding of what you should be screening for already. There's no need for recruiters to go setting questions up or things like that. It's about, do you have the skills? It's skill based and outcome based kind of assessment and pre-screening. And at the end of that conversation, the system will then analyze again, all of the information we have about that candidate. Are they likely fit, or are they less likely to proceed or not, or meet their client requirements, and give them feedback on that as well. So again, within less than an hour, the candidate has gone from applying to actually understanding more about the role, which is the first reason they applied for a role was to know more about it, not to get the job. So that's the first thing to remember. That candidates are not just applying to get a job; they're applying to find out more because the amount of information presented is insufficient. Uh, so they've gone through that journey. They've got that information. They now have feedback to say, you know what, you're probably not going to get a call for this um, because of these reasons. So give them specific reasons. Here's the where we've talked about, or you didn't share, or this you said that this doesn't meet your expectations, your requirements. So why don't have a look at some of the other roles we have, and we can go through that journey. At the same time as that's happening, you also recruiters will get the same notifications for people that are saying, "Hey, this person actually is a really good fit." We've told them that you've why they're a good fit. We've told them that to expect a phone call from you, and now they're waiting and ready to get that phone call. And you also don't need to go through the other 50 or 40 candidates. When you reach the stage of the third agent, which is what that's doing as managing those jobs, so it says, okay, we're seeing this process. We've gone through the pre-screening. We've prepared submission summary notes and details, and given the recruiter all that information. We've given the candidate back feedback. Now let's check, how do we need any more candidates for this role, or do we have enough? Have we pre-screened enough people based on our conversion rates to fill the role and not need more? And if we have, then Glide will automatically shut the advertising down. So you've got that loop that now completes itself between advertise, screen, get enough candidates, take the advertising down. The same way a good recruiter would. They wouldn't be inviting more people to apply that couldn't get the job.
wow. I what I really love there is the intelligence to understand the role of advertising, and that this is where the candidate experience starts. This is where the problem begins,
Hmm.
and kind of shutting off that spigot. And for example, we use Indeed, and I'm sure a lot of people do, or maybe they use ZipRecruiter or one of these. And you'll set like a daily budget, or you'll set clicks, and by turning it off and on, you're very subtly, maybe not so subtly, you're saving quite a bit of money.
Oh yeah, yeah. You say, well, you first off, you're
I
saving
think there's a
about
lot of waste that's
there's a
happening. I don't
huge
think
amount.
I wish I could. I haven't had time to kind of dig into just how much waste is happening there, but I would imagine just by turning the thing off.
Yeah, you're getting typically you're getting about 60%. You need to cut your ad budget typically by 60 to 70%. So
Well,
there's a,
and
and there's a
then
couple of reasons for that.
a smart salesperson who wanted to sell an AI solution would say, "We are already spending the money.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
just shift it. Let's just shift it from Indeed to an AI, a smart AI system." I don't know the economics of Glide, but
yeah.
um,
That's effectively it. I mean, it's about cost neutral for that when
yeah,
you use that perspective.
makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Wow, I mean, we could literally talk for hours around this.
There is a lot more, and we've got some really cool new stuff coming out, talking about that integration with MS Teams and Copilot, where Glide is actually creating the bridge between those platforms and your ATS and your community. So there's some really exciting stuff coming out there in the very near future too.
Well, that is great. I hope everyone finds the way to glide over and talk to Mr. Cancun from
I would love,
Ireland, the Ireland Cancun
yeah.
tech entrepreneur. Rod, we're going to do this again. I do see something in the future for us. We will have another conversation. Maybe we'll do a demo. You've got a YouTube channel. Obviously, you've got a website, and we'll put everything in the notes down there for people to connect. So, are you going sailing anytime soon? What's the
Uh,
what's the schedule here?
I'm not. I've got a couple of conferences to do in the next few weeks. As it happens, my co-founder is arrived yesterday to the boat in Croatia, so he's off sailing actually at the moment. So,
Ah,
so
oh man,
I've
the
got to wait for the
life,
next time.
the life. Okay, so you're going to a couple conferences. Anything you want to plug or mention?
No, just the ones the affiliated staffing group is in Charleston, so I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been to Charleston before, and they're a good group of people. I like that. Uh, and then we have Bullhorn Engage then at the end of the month.
Yes. Wait, no, where's that one taking place? Bullhorn Engage,
That's in Boston.
Boston. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll be there for
Rod,
that.
great seeing you again, my friend.
You too, Tony. It's been an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to the demo. And of course, I want to show you what we're doing with Unity is pretty phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to showing you that too.
That's great. I can't wait. I hope everyone else checks it out and add Glide into your research mix in terms of figuring out what is right for you. All right, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Rod,
Thank you so
no one
much.
feels sorry for you, man. Cancun, whatever.
Hey,
Then going to
that's the life.
Charleston for some of the best seafood in the world. You're just spoiled with riches here.
Life's full of those. Yeah, like I said,
Serendipitous.
when life gives you lemons, make margaritas.
Oh my God. And with that, folks, we are out of here.